Welcome into Transformations with Ordinary Pioneer. My name is Halina Schriefer. I'm the founder of Ordinary Pioneer, our spiritual healing community in Whitehouse. Here talking about transformations with loss with my very special guest and friend, Krista McCulloch. She is a mental health therapist with Anchored in Hope Counceling, and I'm so glad that you are here today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And your story, your transformation story has been inspiring me since you began to share and to speak out about your story. And I would love for you to share with our viewers just kind of what kickstarted your transformation story in the most recent years.
Sure. In 2018, my family went through a total loss house fire. That night, I was working at my contingent job, and I was supposed to be working until around midnight or 12:30. And when I was at work, I started out of nowhere to get sick really suddenly. Um, and I tried to kind of keep working through it. I'm not one to leave work. It progressively got really bad to the point I had to call my mother-in-law to come pick me up from work. I was like, I don't even feel like I can drive home. I'm very sick. She comes, picks me up. It was late at like 11 o'clock at night. She drops me off at my house. Everything seemingly seems fine. She leaves. I walk in the door. I'm home an hour and a half earlier than I was supposed to be home because I didn't work my whole shift. At the time, my husband was sleeping in bed with my younger one, or my older son, because he, was going through a stage where he didn't want to sleep. So I go in and wake him up, and I was crying. I remember that. And I was like, something's wrong. Like, I got sick out of nowhere. Your mom had to drive me home. I don't know what's happening. Something's wrong. And so he wakes up, kind of disoriented because he was in a dead sleep. And he said, let me go get you some pajamas. And so he goes up to our bedroom. He gets me pajamas, and immediately our fire alarms start going off. This is within 2 minutes of me stepping in the door. And we turn and look, and we just see smoke just coming down in the room right next to us. And so we just look at each other, and he's like, you get one kid, I get the other. So he runs and gets our older son. I run and get our younger son out of his crib. And we just book it out of the house. And when we get out there, at that time, my husband thought it was just a small little fire. And so he's like, let me run back in and see if I can put it out. And so by the way, don't do this. This is not recommended.
Don't do this at home. Oh my goodness.
You're not supposed to go back in. You're not supposed to go back in. So do not do that if this happens to you. But he runs back in the house thinking it's a small fire he can put out. And within 30 seconds, he runs back out, and he's like, he told me that sorry, it still gets hard for me to talk about. This has been years. It's still hard. He tells me that the room our older son was just sleeping in, that there was flames shooting down onto his bed where he was just sleeping 30 seconds before. And he's like, there's nothing we can do. The upstairs was filled with smoke by the time he got up there. So we called 911, obviously. Our next door neighbor is actually a firefighter.
Oh,
and so we went and got him. He's trying to put a hose on it. Long story short, we later found out that when I walked in the front door, our entire attic was already on fire. We just couldn't tell. So when my mother-in-law dropped me off, the whole attic was already on fire.
While you were in there, you had no idea that this was happening while you were in there.
No idea. And, up until this point, I hadn't really believed in modern day miracles. I was, kind of like, I believe in, miracles when Jesus was alive. But I kind of was skeptical of modern day miracles. But to have lived this out myself and just see the timing, the way it happened, God delivered me home at the exact moment I needed to be there to wake up my husband and for our family to be able to be saved. It was pretty miraculous, and it's still hard for me to wrap my mind around in a lot of ways. Long story short, it ended up being a total loss house fire. We pretty much got out with just the clothes on our back. We weren't able to save anything else. The firefighters worked on it all night, but it was, you know, a total lost house fire essentially. So that is kind of what spurred my journey,
And I have like
initially.
chills with all of that. I mean, just like each event seemed to be so perfectly orchestrated, and
Yes.
like the devastation of what actually happened as a part of your story, but how it played out and how
Yes.
protected you were in the midst of all of this devastation, and your family, like everyone got out safe, and just,
Yeah.
you're well and you're here. And
Yes.
it blows me away how orchestrated everything was, and how God
Yes.
was able to work in that way to get you into safety. And please share with us like what happened after that, because then that kickstarted your business of Anchored
Yes.
in Hope.
Yes. So prior to our house fire, I had worked for years in community mental health, larger mental health agencies doing um, therapy work. And I just really felt like I couldn't serve clients in the way they deserve to be served. Just high caseload, unable to really spend time with clients, get to the root of, what they were struggling with. But it was comfortable. That's what I
Mhm.
knew. Um, and after I went through this total loss, it just completely changed my perspective on life, and how I was living. One of the biggest lessons that I learned is that I was seeking out comfort,
Mm.
that I was chasing comfort, and I had no idea I was doing that.
Mm.
I was doing it unintentionally. But the fire really opened my eyes up to that, realizing that I was seeking out comfort because I associated comfort with safety,
Mm.
which I think a lot of us do.
And what is comfort? What would you say comfort is now?
Com- so for me, then comfort was like having a job where like I didn't have to have any like I could just step in and do it and there was other people running it,
Mm.
right? Like there wasn't a level of risk for me.
Mm.
Also just like making sure my family was comfortable, we had what we needed financially. I grew up in a family where my parents really talked about stability,
Mm.
stability. Like you need to have stability. Every choice you make needs to reflect like that stability. You need to pick a career that's stable,
Mhm.
right? My dad was a business owner, and he didn't have a good experience with it. So
Mm.
I was definitely always he always talked to me
Never gonna
about
do
like
that.
do not, open a business that is not stable,
Mm.
right? It's not stable. Um, and so I think just a lot of the ways we were living, very low risk, things that just allowed us to live the lifestyle we wanted to live comfortably,
Mhm.
right? I wasn't challenged. I wasn't living up to my potential, o- out of fear, but I didn't realize that it was fear. And I think a lot of us can relate to this, especially people who have grown up with some trauma
Yeah.
in their childhood or some chaos,
Mhm.
in their childhood or unresolved wounds, because they didn't have that stability in their childhood. Then
Mhm.
when you get older, a lot of times, like, you're like seeking out that stability, and we do that through seeking out comfort a lot of
Mhm.
times. So I was kind of in that trap, I realized. Um, and so I just really felt God telling me, like, you need to break these chains off.
Mhm.
You need to step out into all the places that you're scared of,
Mhm.
the things that make you feel uncomfortable. And I think the way the fire helped me do that is because I was so uncomfortable. Like,
Yeah.
I lost literally all of my comfort items,
Mhm.
all of my physical items. I had nothing that I knew to
Mhm.
hold on to that was comfortable, right?
Would you say like you were identifying with all of that stuff, like all of the
Yes.
physical that you were identifying with as your source of comfort, rather than, what you began to learn what your true everlasting comfort is?
Yes. And I think I was sold a bill of like that a lot of people are when they're kids
Mhm.
of like, okay, like it means I've reached a certain point or I'm successful if I have a house,
Mhm.
I have two
Check,
kids, I
check.
have, a stable job,
Yeah.
right? Like I think I was falling into that trap. And when you lose everything and
Mhm.
you look around you, you're like, wait a minute, like, did any of that matter?
Mhm.
Um, and it really helped me to lean like fully and completely on God,
Mm.
and let go of a lot of fears that I had.
And you mentioned potential too, where before you weren't living up to your fullest potential. And sometimes I feel like God does that where it's, when we kind of get lazy in our spiritual journey, and then all of a
Yes.
sudden God's like, okay, time's up, health issue or what, like whatever. For me, that's what I can relate to is my health started to plummet. And that was
Yes.
like, okay, you gotta bump up your game a little bit and, serve your purpose. And so then that started to push you into your potential. Yeah.
Yes. Definitely. And I also think another aspect for me is that I associated like being uncomfortable is always being bad,
Mm.
right? So if
Mhm.
something feels uncomfortable, it must be bad and it must mean that I shouldn't do it.
Mm.
So I sought out things that I was good at
Mm.
because I'm like, okay, if I'm good at this, then I feel comfortable with it.
Yeah.
So like for me, like if you had asked me 10 years ago, like would you be a business owner? I would have laughed, so many things that come with being a business owner, I'm so bad at. I'm just being totally honest.
Well, we've talked about this before because you and I are
Yes.
both like we're in these like spiritual and mental health
Yes.
like fields now, and I the same way. Like I never thought myself to be a business owner, and sometimes I forget that I am, and we have to do like the businessy things.
Yes.
But then everything kind of seems to work out, because this is what we're meant to do because we're living in our potential.
Yes. And, you know, if we only do things we're good at, we're
Mm.
really not challenging ourselves. That's why I'm saying I wasn't living up to my
Yeah.
potential, because I was like, okay, I'm not good. I'm good at relating to people. That's easy for me.
Mm.
But like all these other parts that come with running a business, especially because I also struggled with people pleasing in my
Mm.
past, like so hard to run a business because you're never going to make everybody happy, and especially when you have employees and staff members, like I
Mm.
do, it's so easy to fall into that. I want to, make everybody happy on my team, or I want them to see my heart, right? And
Mm.
nobody's ever going to always see your heart.
Yeah.
So it just challenges so many wound areas in
Mm.
me and so many areas that are hard for me. And because of that, it's helped me become so much more resilient than I
Mm.
ever thought that I could be. I've broken out of people pleasing in a lot of
Mhm.
ways. I've realized that I have so many strengths and so much more resilience than I thought,
Mm.
because I've learned all these areas of the business
Mhm.
aspects of running a business that I never thought I would be capable of doing. And it's all through just stepping out in fear. For me, the loss and losing everything is literally the only reason I was able to step out in fear
Mm.
and faith.
That's
Without that,
incredible.
I think I would have just kept living comfortably because I
Mhm.
didn't even realize that I was doing it.
Yeah. So when did you notice that was there a choice ahead of you? When did the idea come of I'm going to open up a business? Did you wake up one day or was it just a progressive thing? How did that begin to transform into creating this beautiful healing service that you have?
It was pretty fast, honestly. After the fire, I just began processing.
Mhm.
And a lot of the things that were coming up for me is why am I living my life? What is my purpose? What things am I placing my value on? And when I began to ask myself those questions, it became very clear like, I am doing jobs that don't align with my values. I'm helping people, but not in the way I believe they deserve to be helped. What's keeping me from opening my own practice and serving people the way I believe they deserve to be served? The answer was fear,
Yeah.
right? And uncomfortableness. Like it's uncomfortable. I don't believe I can do it. I'm scared,
Mhm.
right? And the message I was hearing from God is, you know, I've had you lose everything to know you do have everything you need, right?
Yeah.
You have
Yeah.
everything you need
Mhm.
without all of these other things that you thought you needed,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
And from that moment, we were living in temporary housing.
Mm.
We literally had nothing, and people told me it was a terrible idea, but I was like, I'm going to open my own business.
Mhm.
So I just remember it clear as day, when we're sitting in our little apartment, filling out like, for an LLC, and I'm like, what am I doing? literally everybody except my husband pretty much told me it was a terrible idea. Like, you're not in a stable place. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you need to wait to rebuild your life before you
Mm-hmm.
consider doing this. But I felt such a strong calling to just step out of fear and serve people the way I felt like they deserved to be served in the way that aligned with my values.
And that
And
seems so
yeah,
powerful because you're called when nothing makes sense. And I feel like that's when
yes,
God calls us into action, when things seem most unlikely to happen.
yeah,
Then when we go through, then we can see it's such an act of faith. And I honor you for seeing that and for saying yes. And I think sometimes we're in that position and we don't feel like we have a choice. It's like, all right, this is where I'm guided. I can't say no. Like why would I say no? Because
yeah.
there's that inner knowing that like this is for the greatest good. And so with the challenges that you face now and the fears that come up, what is it? Do you have a spiritual practice that you anchor into that really keeps you going and keeps you present?
So I am a Christian, so I do have a grounding in my own personal faith. But I think just always that mindset of this is temporary.
Mm,
I could lose this. Where I feel like before I was like always trying to hold on to things because I didn't want to lose them.
mm,
Going through the fire and like losing so much physically, it changed my perspective to where I really feel like now having that grounding in faith, but also like understanding that this life is temporary. This business I've built is temporary in a lot of ways,
mm,
right? Like we're making a difference right now, right?
mhm,
Um, but like knowing that I could lose everything and knowing that I'm still okay,
mm.
like it's just freed me.
Yeah.
And that's so grounding
Mm.
for me. If that answers
It
it.
does. And so with Anchored in Hope, what services do you offer there? What's your clientele, the people that come in? What's typically somebody that you would be looking for to support?
Yeah, so we serve ages 3 and up, so pretty much a wide variety. The three things that I think kind of are integral to our mission are providing integrative mental health care.
Mm,
So all of our clinicians are trained. They go through a training program to become integrative mental health professionals, and they get a certification for that. So that means everybody on our team is working from a perspective of treating people mind, body, and spirit.
mm,
How can we get to the root of mental health struggles versus just putting a band-aid on it or a temporary fix?
mm,
The other thing that is pretty integral is for us is access for all. So like making sure that we serve the underserved and that everyone has access to quality integrative mental health care.
mm,
So many of the private practices don't accept all of the Medicaids, and that is really important to us because we believe everybody deserves quality care. So that's the second thing. And then the
mhm,
third thing is a healthy work culture.
mm.
A lot of people on our team have come from, I'll just say it, toxic work
Yeah.
environments, especially in the helping profession,
It's,
ironically.
it's yeah,
It's,
battles are mine.
you know, the work that we do is hard.
Mm,
Secondary trauma is real.
mhm,
And while we're honored to step into people's stories and walk alongside people as they heal through their trauma, it's a lot to take in sometime.
mhm,
And so we really have to work on ourselves and our own mental health. And so if we're working in a workplace where, we have 100 clients on our caseload and we don't have a good work-life balance and there's not a good work culture, it's not going to work because we cannot serve from an empty cup. We cannot do this work if we're not in a good place ourselves.
mhm,
So first and foremost, I'm passionate about like loving my team, supporting my team, making sure everybody on my team has a healthy work-life balance, so that we can really do this work in a meaningful and healthy way. So yeah, those are the things that I would say are most important for us. And then everyone who walks in our door, just making sure they feel seen and heard and
mhm,
valued for who they are and that they know they're not a number.
mhm.
So
Thank you so much. I'm grateful for what you do and just supporting this community and just sharing your story, getting that word out there of what's possible, through loss and your own transformation story. I'm grateful for you being here and sharing your story.
thank you. And I don't want to give the impression that you do this and it's you step out in faith and fear and that
Easy
it's
peasy.
yeah, I don't want to leave giving that impression
Yes.
because I'm going to be honest, I'm
Hmm.
uncomfortable every day.
Yes.
I've learned to embrace the uncomfortableness versus associate it with something bad,
Hmm.
right? Uncomfortableness is part of the journey, and it's also part of your journey of healing,
Hmm.
right? You cannot avoid uncomfortableness. You have to step into that.
Hmm.
You have to step into the struggle to really get to the other side. And owning a business for me is it's every day, it's challenges, it's uncomfortableness, it's things I have to work on with my that it brings up things in myself I have to
Hmm.
work on. So it has not been easy, but I would take it any day. Because of all the gains that I've had as far as like growing as a person and kind of just yeah, it's amazing, but it's hard.
It's definitely hard. Thank you for topping us off with that and also like conveying the difficulty in it, but also that like with that act of faith, it does bring us through. And of course, we're going to have these challenges.
Yep,
I
it's part of
appreciate
the
those. It's a
journey.
part of the journey. We can't grow without it. Well,
Thank
I'd like
you.
to invite us all just to pause for a moment. If you'd like to close your eyes and place both of your hands on your heart and just take this moment to have a few deep breaths, anchoring into the present moment, anchoring into the heart in this deep knowing that we have everything that we could absolutely ever need right here, right now. It is being delivered to us of the highest forces, of the highest support, of the highest love. Together, we'll take one deep breath in and release as one. Well, thank you so much for joining in on another episode of Transformations with Ordinary Pioneer. You can find more about Anchored in Hope and Krista's journey on the link in the comments. I'll put that in there. And please, if you haven't subscribed to us, check out our website, ordinarypioneer.com, for all the different services that we have. And we look forward to getting together with you next time. Namaste.